you doing? Do we have sound still? Did you cut off the sound?
Which mic are you using?
This one? I don't know. Is it last?
Okay.
Oh. Use the other one.
Why did you break it? How's that?
Much better.
All right. How's everybody doing? We doing okay?
Yeah.
We're doing awesome.
Yeah.
Anybody been watching the World Series? Anybody care about baseball? Nobody? Just me and Crispy? All right.
Did the Dodgers win yesterday?
Yeah. There we go.
Who's in it?
Who's in it? The Dodgers and the Astros. Not that it even matters. I was just curious.
Dodgers are gonna win.
All right. All right. So, okay. So we know who's in the World Series now. Who can remember what we talked about last week? Seen to unseen. That's great. What did that mean?
Looking at how temporary this life is, it's not good to look at how temporary this life is, and more importantly, to look at eternity.
Right. So living for eternity, right, instead of the temporary. So making a shift from the seen to unseen. And so we took that verse from 2 Corinthians that said the things that are seen are temporary, but the things that are unseen are eternal. And so, guys, that's one of the key points of the Christian faith. And maybe one we don't talk about so much because just like anyone else, it's easy for us to get focused on things that are temporary. What are some examples of things that are temporary? Okay, like when we say that, just so we're all on the same page. A dog?
A job.
Did you say a dog? Okay, I didn't know if you said, yeah, dogs are temporary. Yeah, that's right.
A job.
A job? Job's temporary. Your house is temporary. Your life? Here's one. School, there you go, good. I know, yeah, education. Now, just because something's temporary doesn't mean it's bad, right? And God uses things that are temporary. In fact, He has a plan for your life in this world. It's going to be different from what it might look like in the next, you know what I mean, in eternity. But it's important because how we live this life impacts our next life, impacts eternity, okay? And remember, the whole idea about what we're talking about in this series is, while everybody, we typically judge people from the outside. We look at people and, sometimes people can be really judgmental. And we look at how a person is. And one of the things we talked about last week is oftentimes we see people's problems instead of their potential. But each person, while they have a body, there's something inside that's who they really are. It's their soul. And that part of you is eternal. Okay? It's never going to die. That part of you is going to stand before God. We're going to get different bodies. We don't even know what that means, okay? But each one of us in this room is going to stand before God. And that's what we talked about last week. And it's actually we're going to pick up this week because this week we're talking about making a shift from being a consumer to being a steward. So last week was seen to unseen. And you can't talk about this one until you talk about what we talked about last week. Okay? Because if you don't understand that this world is temporary, what we're talking about today won't make any sense. It'll seem crazy to you. And I'm going to tell you it's countercultural, and I'll even tell you this. It's counter-church culture. People who go to church don't live this way, but they ought to. And we ought to. And remember, our goal is not to be church-like, it's to be Christ-like. So there's a lot of people who go to church. We're not supposed to imitate necessarily everybody that steps foot in a church. We're supposed to imitate Christ. Okay? And now there's some people who are good examples. Okay? And we look up to them and we chase it. We want to be like that. Don't get me wrong. Because Paul even said, you can imitate me because I'm imitating Christ. So, that's what we want to chase for. But we all want to be like Jesus. So, like, if Jesus was at your school, what would he be like? And that's what you want to be like. And so if Jesus was at your job, what would he be like? Or your college? Or if he was a parent, if he had your kids, or if he was your parent, if he was a kid, how would he be? And so we want to be like Jesus, and we're talking about this. And this transformation, this change, has to come from within. Okay, so Jesus now, remember, Son of God, Savior of the world. He came. He died on the cross for your sin, for my sin. That's the gospel message. All have sinned. Everybody has sinned. Everybody in this room has done things they know they shouldn't have done. Even if they didn't understand the full implications of it at that time. Every sin has a punishment. Okay, and Jesus came and he said this. Listen, he came that everyone might be saved. A lot of people think Jesus came to judge the world or to send people to hell. Jesus didn't come to do that. He came to save the world. That was his stated mission. So he came to save the world so that at judgment, we could all point to him and say, yeah, I know I messed up, but I was forgiven, I was saved, I was cleansed, I was made new because of what Jesus did. And so we were all supposed to look to that point. So this man, Jesus, okay, wouldn't you want to hear what he has to say about how to live your life and about the end times? You know, in our day and age, it's like we're right on the brink of nuclear war. Has anybody thought about that at all? Okay, yeah, good. You guys are too young to worry about that kind of stuff. Good for you. You know, you do? Yeah, you do? I believe that. Okay, you probably like YouTube, like, how do I make a nuke? And it's like, yeah, people show up at your house, John. Because Sam just thinks everything. No, but you know, it's like, we're right on the brink, and a lot of people are worried about this kind of stuff. They're really afraid. But Jesus, he talked about the end times. Who heard recently when that guy came out and said it's going to be the end of the world this Saturday? What was that, a few weeks ago? The 23rd, October 23rd? September 23rd? Yeah, that's right. And I had a wedding that day, and I was like, okay, well, maybe they're going to get married, maybe not. But it didn't happen. We had the wedding. But this stuff always happens. But, you know, Jesus, if you knew what Jesus said, you wouldn't even worried about that. Because Jesus said nobody knows the day or the hour. So, you know, this guy, if he was right, it would have been the greatest coincidence of all time. Because he doesn't know. No one knows. And so wouldn't you want to know what Jesus said about the end? And see, Matthew 24 and 25, obviously we're not going to have time to go through all this, okay? Because 2 whole chapters. But I'd encourage you to read that if you're curious about the end. Because Jesus talks so much about it. But he says a few things. He says this in Matthew 24. So if you want to flip open, we're going to be in Matthew 25 mainly tonight. We're starting off in Matthew 24. So if you want to flip there. Okay, Matthew 24, starting with verse 42. He says, therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. So he's talking to the disciples here. And he says this about the end times because they want to know what's going to happen. You know, this is shortly before Jesus is going to be crucified. Okay? Now, the disciples don't understand this. He's going to be crucified, he's killed, dead, resurrected, and then he's going to ascend to heaven. And these disciples, he's been training up all the time. And he says this to them, but he also says it to us. He says, therefore, he says, stay awake because you do not know what day the Lord is coming. And right before this, he says, listen, when I return, when Jesus returns, now I want you to understand, when he's talking about this return, he's talking about, boom, judgment coming. He's talking about when he returns, you know, we know that there's going to be a rapture, there's going to be a return, Christians are going to go to heaven, there's going to be judgment, okay? And he says, listen, you don't know what day I'm returning, but you want to be ready. He says, it's going to be like, a lot like the days of Noah. Who knows who Noah is? Anybody? Okay, anybody seen the movie? Yeah, just throw that. That's not really, you know, what happened, okay? But, all right, so Noah, he lived in the Old Testament. And you know what? It says in the days of Noah, everybody was eating, drinking, partying, giving in marriage, being married, working. They were doing everyday life, planning for their future, planning ahead. You know, I have to think, you know, somebody right before the flood came with Noah, somebody probably just got a promotion and was really excited about it. I mean, okay, they didn't have promotions like the way we do now, I'm sure. But you get what I'm saying. Somebody probably just got married. Somebody probably just got a new goat or something and was pretty excited about this goat. And you know what? Boom. The next day, it started raining. And then it says the waters of the deep, okay, the fountains of the deep opened up. And the water keeps rising. And your marriage really didn't matter anymore. Your goat really didn't matter anymore. All that stuff because it was time. And see, right up to that point, there were signs. There were it's not that the people were totally unaware. It's just they put it off. They put God off. They put God off. And then boom, that moment came. And it says that's exactly what it's going to be like when Jesus returns. People are going to be getting promotions. People are going to be pursuing things. People are going to be graduating. Somebody's going to have gone, just think about this. This drives me nuts. Somebody's going to have gone to school for like 12 years to be a doctor and then graduate and be like, yes, I got it. And then boom, Jesus returns. And it's going to be like, I just wasted my whole life doing school. But that's how it's going to be. People pursuing life, and then boom, Jesus returns, and everything changes on that day. And see, this is something that as Christians, we ought to have our eyes set on. See, we ought to be able to see, you know what? Jesus is coming again, and that ought to change the way that we live. Okay? Because if this day is really coming, and it's coming soon one way or another, either Jesus is going to return or you're going to go see Jesus. You're going to die. And when that happens, we're going to stand before him, and the Bible says we're going to give an account. And so while we're here, we have a job. We're to be stewards. Okay, we're to be stewards of what God has given us. So what does this word steward mean? Who can help me out here? Because I think I say that word stewardship or being a steward, and some of us are probably like, who's steward? And that's not what I'm talking about. What does anybody know what a steward means? What that means?
Person on the airplane.
No, could be, but not in this sense.
Servant.
Kind of. A servant could be a steward, but it doesn't always mean it. So a steward, in the biblical sense of this word and what we're talking about, a steward is somebody who is given authority over something that's not their own. Okay? So if you were a steward, that would be like, let's just say I was really rich. And this would be a good example. Someone who's really rich and they hire someone to take care of their lawn. That person's like a steward of their lawn. They don't own the lawn, but it's their job to maintain it, and they'll have to give an account for how it looks. You see what I mean? And so that's just one simple way of understanding stewardship. But the whole idea is a steward is taking care of something that they don't own. Okay? And that person's responsible to the master. And in the Old Testament, yes, often Nathan was right. This ties in with being a servant. Okay? So I want you to look at Matthew 25, verse 14 with me. Okay? Because now Jesus, remember, just right before this, Jesus is telling them about the end times. He's saying, stay awake, be ready, stay awake, be ready. It's going to be like the times of Noah, but don't be like that. Be like the servant who is waiting, ready for the master to return. He tells them all these different things, saying, be ready. And then we get to this parable. Okay? And it's such an important parable. And it starts off like this. He says, for it will be like a man. So he says, once again, right before this, he says, you do not know the day or the hour. So he's still talking about his return. And he says this, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted them to his property. Now yours might say it a little differently. I know there's several different versions, but it's all saying the same thing. And this right here gives us a clear picture of stewardship. The master calls his servants and he entrusts them. He gives them authority over his property, his goods. That word, some of yours says gold, some says talents, some say, it says all sorts. But the whole idea, that word, what it means is, it means goods, money, property. So he gives these people who are his servants authority over them to watch out. He entrusts it to them, but it's just for a little while. Okay, so he's going on a long journey. And so we know in our Christian life, he's talking about us. Jesus always used stories to explain deep truths to us, okay? So you and I are the servants in this story, okay? And that's not so far off, but we're not servants in the sense of forced labor. We're willing servants for Christ. That's what we are. He doesn't force anybody to serve him. He leaves it open. You can choose to accept Jesus in your life. You can choose to follow him. You can choose to serve him. Or you can choose not to. Just like these people back in Noah's time, and just like how it'll be at the end. There's going to be people not serving him, living their own life. And yet there will be others who serve him, but they'll be willing servants. Just like it says in Romans 12:1. It says, I urge you, brothers and sisters, offer, in view of God's mercy, offer yourselves, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Okay? Now, he doesn't want your body, he wants your life. That's what he's saying. It's symbolic of, he wants your life. So he's saying, offer your life as a living sacrifice. So you live for God. And so each person walking with Christ has done this. Okay? This is a step. This is how you walk with Christ. Because in order to follow Jesus, you have to confess your sins, you have to turn from them, and you have to follow Jesus. Put your faith in him. And so you start following him. So you offer him your life. And you may not know what that means. You don't know every task God's going to call you to. You don't know everything he's going to have you do. But you know he's got your life now. So you're a willing servant. And then guess what? He entrusts us with things just like he did them. But for us, the things we have, while sometimes it is goods of possession, he has given you talents. He's given you time. He's given you abilities. He's given you, even, think about this. God has entrusted you, if you're following him, he's entrusted you with people that you know and you have connections with and family that others don't. He's entrusted you with them to share a message. He's entrusted you with a whole lot of things. He's entrusted you with money. Some of you. Some of you are like, no, he hasn't. Okay, well, some of you he's entrusted with money. And others of you, you'll get there. And see, he's entrusted it to them, and he is expecting us to use it to further his kingdom. He doesn't give us things just for ourselves, because otherwise it would be temporary focused. And remember we talked last week, God's focused on eternity. So the things he's given you, he's not so worried about what kind of house you have or what kind of car you have. That's okay, don't worry, that's just water. So don't worry about it. So he's not worried about that stuff. He's worried about how you're using those things for his kingdom. And see, this is where it gets difficult because, and I'll use an example here. So imagine I gave you $20. Okay, you're like, yeah, I want $20. So imagine I gave you $20 and you said, all right, yes. Now I gave it to you. You didn't have it. Okay? You received it. I gave it to you. So I give you $20, and then you're getting ready to leave, and I said, hey, don't forget, I want you to tithe with that. So that's 10%. So you're like, okay, well, I'll give $2. And I say, hey, did you hear about the building fund? Brittany just prayed about the roof. So I want you to give $5 to that. No, it's getting a little harder. You're like, man, I only have $17 left. Okay, I'll give $5 to the roof. So you got $12. You're driving home. You're on your way home, and then you see somebody from church over on the side of the road. He ran out of gas. I don't know. Probably Cameron. Okay, I had to fix a flapper. So you see Cameron on the other side of the road, and she needs some gas money. And you're like, okay, Travis gave me this money, and then I call you up, and I'm like, hey, did you hear Cameron's on the side of the road again? Can you give her $5? She needs gas. And you're like, man, I only have $12 left. What? 8? No. We're still at 12.
You said 5 twice.
Yeah, but you haven't given it away yet. So this puts you at $7. That puts you at $7 after you give it away. Okay. So now you only have $7 left. And you're getting pretty upset about it. And next time I call you, you say, Travis, stop calling me. I'm not giving away any more money. And I said, wait, I gave you that money. You had nothing. I gave you $20, and now you're complaining because I wanted you to give away a couple more dollars. See, it would have been a lot easier if I just gave you $7. Because then you'd be like, that's mine. I don't have to give it away. See, but that's not how God works. He doesn't just give you what he wants you to keep. He gives you enough so that you can not only keep it, that you can use it to advance his kingdom. And so if you're keeping everything God is giving you, I can tell you right now, you're not a good steward. And you might say, well, I'm waiting until I get more money. If you're waiting until you get more money, you'll never give. If you're waiting until you have more time, you're never going to have more time. Like, I don't know, some people are like, well, I'll wait till I have kids, then I'll get really serious about God. I'm like, I have no time right now. Are you waiting for this? Don't wait for this. You got to start earlier. But see, a lot of times what we do is we stop realizing that it's God who gave it to us anyways. See, and think about these servants here. So you've got these 3 servants, and it says this. He entrusted to them, and then it says this, each according to their ability. And not everybody got the same. So not everybody got the same amount, but I'll even take this in talents. Not everybody gets the same talents. Not everybody has the same income. So you might look at someone else and say, well, the way they're faithful is, they sing in the worship band, but I can't sing. So I guess I have nothing to give. As if that's the only thing God wants. But that's not true. Or you might say, I don't have as much money as so-and-so. See, when we did the roof pledge, I know he's given a lot of money. I only have a little bit, so I'm not going to give. And see, stewardship isn't about, it's not about how much you have. I wanted you to look back with me real quick. And you don't have to even look. I'll just read it. It says this, then 2 men will be left in the field. This is verse 24. 2 men will be walking in the field. One will be taken, one will be left. Now these 2 men are doing the same job. They're in the same field. It looks like they have the same occupation, probably the same wages, and one will be taken and one will be left. Okay? Then look next. It says 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and one will be left. One's going to heaven, one's left behind. This is what's going to happen at the end. Now they have the same job. They're both working at the mill. They're both supplying for their home. See, it's not about what job you have. It's not about how much money you have. It's not about what talents you have. It's about what you do with what you have. What are you doing with what you have? Some people say, I'll give to God once I get older. Why? What are you waiting for? Because God's not waiting to use you until you have more money. God's not waiting to use you until you hone your abilities more. God wants to use you now. And so the question with stewardship always is not what are you going to do for God? It's what are you doing with what you have? And he uses Matthew 25, almost all of it, to drive home this point. So I'm going to finish this story about these guys. Okay, and you can read through it. I'm not going to read through it verse by verse. So to one man, he gives 5 talents. Okay, and these talents, like I said, they can represent money. They represent this guy's goods. But for us, they represent talents. They represent time. They represent money. They represent ability. They represent situations God has put us in to reach other people because that's our goal. So he's given one 5. He gives another 2. And he gives another 1, each according to their ability. So the guy who gets 5, he goes out right away and he uses it for God. He uses it for the master. He goes out and he invests it and he trades it and boom, he gets 5 more. The one with 2 talents, he didn't have 5. He only had 2. He had less than him. You think that might have discouraged him? No way. He went out and traded. He went out and worked. He didn't have as much as that guy, but he was faithful with what he had. And all of a sudden he traded, he got 2 more. And then you get to the guy with 1. And the guy with 1, he was a little different. See, he was like, I don't know if he felt sorry for himself that he only got 1. If he was lazy. If he felt like he didn't need to use this for God, he could just do whatever he wanted with it. And so he just took it and he dug a hole. And he never used it. And the master comes back and he sees the first servant, the one he gave 5, and he's got 10. And he says, wow, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the rest of your master. Wow, man, that's awesome. That's what you want to hear at the end of your life. Remember, he's talking about the end times. He's talking about his return. Jesus is going to come back, and he's going to give you one of 2 responses. If you're walking with him, if you have put your faith in him, he's either going to say, well done, good and faithful servant, because you followed me. You obeyed me. You used what I gave you. And you know what? The guy who got 2, it's like, man, he got 3 less than the other one. Didn't matter. God wasn't judging him according to the guy who got 5. He was judging this servant on the fact that he got 2 talents. And what did he do with what he had? And what did he do? He got 2 more. Oh, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the rest of your master. I can just hear God. You know, we talked just a couple weeks ago about how God's a loving father. I can just hear him saying, man, I'm so proud of you, son. Can't you? You did so good. You know, he's not comparing. He's not saying you didn't do as good as this guy or what. No way. He's saying, listen, you were faithful with what I gave you. You did well. You ran the race. You fought the good fight. Enter into rest. Enter into the rest of your master. That's going to be amazing. And so can't you imagine this third guy as he's hearing what's going on? Right? I mean, I got to imagine he's starting to be like, oh boy. I didn't do anything. These guys have been out working. They've been out trading. They've been out investing. And you know what? I felt okay after the one guy with 5 because I was like, I didn't get 5. I thought surely the other servant who only got 2, that he wouldn't have done much, and then I would have softened the blow for me. But he went out and he doubled it. And I didn't do anything. And God says, you could have even just put it in the bank and it would have given interest. But you did nothing. And his end is the complete opposite of the others. It says he was cast out into the darkness. It says he was cast out. He was cast away. He's not entering into the rest. And then directly following this, Jesus lays out a picture of the final judgment. And you might think what he would say about the final judgment would be different than this. But this is what he says. Matthew 25, it says in verse 31, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. Before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates sheep from the goats. So he's splitting people up, okay? I mean, just all the angels are with him. Maybe they're going through the people and saying, you over here, you over here, you over here, you over here, you over here. And I imagine this one talent guy sees the 5 and the 2 go over there. And he's like, I hope I go over there. And he gets, nope, you're over here. I mean, can you imagine? Just being separated one side to the other. And then he puts the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And then the king says to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. He's saying it again. Enter into the rest of your Father. Okay? This is what Jesus, the founder of our faith, guys, this is what Jesus said about the end. I mean, we got to soak this in. This is important. He wanted us to know this. In Matthew, it's really the last long teaching he gave before he was crucified. Okay? He wanted us to know this. And so he separates them, and then what do you think he says to them? Why are they getting in? Why are they going to heaven? Why are the others not? He says, for I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. And everybody on the righteous is saying, Jesus, no. I mean, that all sounds good, and I wish I did that for you, but I never did any of that. I never saw you hungry and fed you. I never saw you thirsty. I never gave you a drink of water. How could you say I did that? He says, anytime you did it for the least of these, you did it for me. And he is judging these people according to this passage. He's saying this, you're going to heaven because you were faithful with what you had. Doesn't say you fed every hungry person, but you helped people who were around you who were in need. You were a good steward of your time. You went and visited people in prison with your possessions. You clothed those who were naked. And see, what we have in America is we live in a consumer culture, right? Where everything is about me. What more can I get? Okay? What more? What's the newest clothes I can get? What's the newest shoes I can get? What's the coolest thing I can do? What's going to give me the most pleasure? What's going to do the best for me? And Jesus wants us to be stewards because we have to go back to the beginning, just like with the $20 bill. Sometimes when God asks you to do something, or me, it feels really hard. Like, God, you want me to give up my time? Well, son, who gave you that time? Wait, you want me to give $100? How much do you make a week? Oh, 300, 400. I gave you that. Oh yeah, that's right. But we don't think this way. Because we're not trained to, because we haven't had a mindset change. My time is not my own. And then sometimes we feel like we went out and earned it. Like, you know what? I'm just a good worker. I'm really talented. You know, I work really good with my hands, and I fix this thing, and I earn that money. Really, because who gave you that ability to be good with working with your hands? Who gave you that talent? Who gave you the ability to accomplish your job? Who gave you the money? Who gave you the time? Who gave you the family? Listen, God, every good thing comes from God.
Amen.
It's a gift from Him. Remember when we talked about this, we have to make this shift to being like a child. Because everything we have, we've received. We got to get back to that mindset. Because there's going to be a lot of people who stand before God who are upset with Him. They don't understand why they had to give things away, or they don't understand why He judged them severely. And it's simply going to be because everything I gave you, you held on to like it was your own. When I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me anything to drink. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. Jesus, we never saw you. I never saw you, Jesus. He says, yeah, but when you saw the least of these who were in need, that was me. And those are going to be just like the man who had the one talent who buried it. And it says they're going the other way. They're not entering into the rest. They're not entering into God's rest. And what's crazy is, while we know you are saved by grace through faith, you cannot earn salvation. Okay? This message is not saying, hey, you know what? Or if you want to be a Christian, go out and give some stuff away. You can give as much stuff away as you want and still go straight to hell. That's not it. But what it's saying is, you cannot say you are following God while you waste the things He's given you. They're His. It's just like this servant. He was in the master's household, but everything he got from the master, he threw away, and at the end, he was held accountable for it. He invested everything in short term. He didn't invest in his Father's kingdom like he was supposed to. And so, guys, for us, what are you doing with the things that you have? I'm not asking you what are you going to do in 5 years. I'm not asking you what are you going to do when you get out of college. Now just imagine, remember we talked about that college student who just went to school their whole life and then Jesus returned. What if that person was, God had called them to serve in the church, but they said, I can't because I'm pursuing this. And God had called them to give a little money, but I can't. But don't worry, God, I will. I will once I graduate. I will once I get a little further. I will once I get a little further. Once I get a good job, once I pay off my school, I'll really start serving you. And then boom, he returned. So you can't put these things off. The time is now. What are you doing with what you have? Your time, your gifts, your talents, and your treasure. That's what God wants to know. And He wants you to make a shift. And I'll tell you something. If you think it's going to be easier once you have more, let's just apply it to what I did earlier. What would be easier? If I give you a $20 bill and you end up with $7, or if I give you a $100 bill and you end up with $7? It's not easier once you have more. Jesus said, man, it's so hard for the rich to inherit the kingdom of God. Why? Because they start trusting in that more than they trust in God. It's so easy to forget. Wait a second, this was a gift from God. Wait a second, all this is for Him. Wait a second, He wants me to invest this in the kingdom. It doesn't say it's impossible, but it says it's very hard. And so, what are you doing with what you have? We're going to end with a song. If the band could come up. We're just gonna sing "Great Are You, Lord," and we're just gonna do like a verse and a chorus. Okay? But this song says, "It's your breath in my lungs, so I pour out my praise." Think about it. Not just your time, not just your money, not just your talents. Your very breath is a gift from God. And you know what? Tonight, if you've been wasting it, if you've been spending it on yourself, if you've been going your own way, there's no better time than tonight than just to get it right. It's okay. Remember, God is a loving Father. When He reveals something to us, He wants us just to fix it and move on. He'll help you do it. So, as we end, if you'd like to come pray, you can come to the altars and pray. You can pray at your seat. If you come to the altar, we'll have someone come pray with you. We're just going to sing a chorus and a verse, and we'll pray and close. So just each of us, let's reflect, though. So let's stand and worship.